Now, as we know, 32-year-old Nick Reiner has been formally charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in connection with the apparent stabbing deaths of his parents, renowned director Rob Reiner and photographer and producer Michelle Singer Reiner, who were found dead in their Los Angeles home back on December 4th.
The industry is frozen solid right now, and it hasn't felt like this in decades. Not since the old legends ruled Hollywood has there been this kind of heavy, uncomfortable silence. This isn't normal sadness or routine shock. It's a cold wave rolling through studio lots, sound stages, and private offices everywhere. When word first broke about that quiet home in Brentwood, people expected the usual playbook, a clean statement, soft PR language, then everyone moves on. That's how it always goes. Until now, because nobody saw this coming. Out of nowhere, Tom Cruise stepped forward, blowing past his packed filming schedule to speak up himself. No handler, no delay, no polished script. This was raw and personal. The same man who keeps his private life sealed tight suddenly decided silence wasn't an option anymore, and that alone rattled the entire town. It hit like a lightning strike. Tom didn't wait for a red carpet or leak a quote. He spoke directly, telling people close to him that the truth about what really happened with Rob and Michelle was something he owed to share. A promise tied to the man who helped shape the most defining moments of his career.
And this comes as there is footage that has surfaced that's been released of apparently Nick allegedly walking alone at a gas station close to the Reiner family home a little after midnight on that Sunday. There's also apparently footage of him allegedly in a convenience store right before his arrest as well. By the way, I will tell you, I think his apparent demeanor in that footage, assuming it's him, could be critical in a potential defense, which I'll talk about more in a minute.
And now, pieces of what Tom's been quietly telling trusted colleagues are starting to surface, and it runs way deeper than that early report ever suggested. If you remember the early 90s, you already know what Tom and Rob created together, one of the most iconic courtroom films ever. But Tom isn't talking awards or box office numbers right now, not even close. He's talking about Rob as a mentor, as family, as the man who carried years of private pain about his son that most people never knew existed. This isn't gossip. This is personal, and it's shaking Hollywood to its core. People around Tom say his energy has changed completely. The usual fire is gone, replaced by something heavy and distant. Like the weight of what he's learning is catching up fast. This isn't just grief. It's the sound of someone watching a family he's known for decades unravel in real time. That night, December 14th, Tom was deep into a late production meeting when his phone buzzed. On the line was a longtime law enforcement contact from Los Angeles, someone he's trusted since his earliest days in the city. 2 names were spoken: Rob, Michelle. Then silence. Tom didn't move. He just stood there, staring out at the city skyline Rob himself helped turn into a Hollywood symbol, knowing nothing was going to be the same again. The official statement laid it out in cold, clinical language, calling it a domestic incident involving sharp force trauma. But insiders say that wording barely scratches the surface. What investigators walked into that night wasn't just a crime scene, it was emotional wreckage, the kind that sticks with you long after the tape comes down. And this is where things shift hard, because what Tom Cruise has shared isn't only about what happened, it's about everything that led up to it. Tom has admitted he knew tensions were boiling long before that night. Months earlier, during a private dinner, Rob Reiner went unusually quiet when the conversation turned to his kids. For a man known for filling every room with energy, that silence stood out. People close to the family now say that moment wasn't random. It was a warning sign nobody fully understood at the time. Tom remembers Rob saying, almost under his breath, that the cycle was getting harder to break. He was talking about Nick Reiner, his long fight with addiction, and the resentment that had been building for years. This wasn't teenage rebellion anymore. It had grown into something heavy, painful, and impossible to ignore. According to Tom, this tragedy wasn't a sudden explosion. It was the result of months, maybe years, of emotional pressure piling up. Rob and Michelle tried to fix things with non-stop love, but without firm boundaries, and that choice left them exposed in ways no one wanted to admit. That's what breaks Tom the most. He feels Hollywood, himself included, respected the Reiners' privacy so deeply that nobody stepped in or asked the hard questions when it still mattered.
That he was homeless, that he was in and out of rehab, that he and his father collaborated on a film known as Being Charlie, which was released in 2016, that's about a young man addicted to drugs and his difficult, combative relationship with his former actor father, who's cold and distant as he tries to recover. Rob, by the way, directed the film.
Rob's work was always filled with meaning, from The American President to Misery. But behind the scenes, Tom says their home had become tense and fragile. Just weeks before everything collapsed, Rob sent Tom a short message about the cost of legacy. At the time, it seemed reflective. Now it feels like a quiet cry for help. Then came the moment no one could wrap their head around: Nick Reiner's arrest. The charges sent shockwaves through Hollywood's inner circle, and Tom couldn't ignore the brutal irony. The man behind A Few Good Men and its legendary courtroom line ended up facing an unbearable truth inside his own home. Investigators are staying tight-lipped about the wounds, but through Tom's private conversations, a darker picture is forming. This wasn't quick or random. It was chaotic, drawn out, and deeply personal. No forced entry, no robbery, no outside threat. This wasn't chance. This was something far closer and far more devastating. This situation feels intentional, deeply personal, and like a serious breach of trust, and that's what has people struggling to process it. These were the same people who gave Nick every opportunity, guidance, resources, and steady support, trying again and again behind closed doors. And Tom Cruise has made one thing very clear. He doesn't agree with the simplified narrative being presented. Nick's legal team, led by Alan Jackson, is expected to focus on emotional strain and the pressure of growing up in a very public environment. But Tom has been telling people close to him that Rob Reiner would not have wanted this moment softened or explained away. Rob believed in facing reality head-on, even when it was painful. What's affecting Tom the most is how he speaks about Michelle Singer. The public knew Rob's work, but Tom knew the partnership behind it. Michelle was the stabilizing force, the balance that allowed Rob to create and lead with purpose. Learning that she was impacted just as deeply changed everything and shifted the conversation entirely. Tom also shared something especially emotional. Michelle had long been the calm presence in the family, often stepping in to ease tension and protect Rob's well-being. She worked quietly to keep peace and shield him from stress. To Tom, the fact that she was involved at all suggests this was not a sudden or careless moment, but something far more serious and considered. That's why Tom believes the January 7th court proceedings will be one of the most emotionally significant moments the industry has seen in years. And as more of Tom's timeline comes to light, one thing is becoming clear. Hollywood's silence wasn't just about privacy. It was about discomfort and fear.
And this all comes as it was also reported Nick had attended a party at Conan O'Brien's house the night before the killings, in which he allegedly went around asking strange questions to guests, got into this apparent weird interaction with actor Bill Hader, then had some sort of loud argument, potentially with his father at the party. His parents left shortly after.
Now Tom is urging the industry to rethink how it handles private family crises, especially when fame makes real pain easier to ignore. He has also remained in close contact with Rob and Michelle's sons, Roy Reiner and Jake Reiner, who are said to be experiencing profound grief. Friends say the family is barely able to speak, still trying to process how their own brother ended up in custody in Los Angeles County. The disbelief is overwhelming, and the emotional weight is something most people can't even picture. For Tom Cruise, the shock goes far beyond loss. It shattered the illusion that the so-called Brentwood bubble ever truly existed. The idea that status, money, or legacy can shield anyone from real-life consequences is gone. Even the most respected names in Hollywood weren't protected from a situation quietly unfolding inside their own home. What truly breaks people down is Tom's account of his final conversation with Rob Reiner. They were discussing a retrospective project meant to celebrate Rob's career when Rob said something that now haunts Tom. He reflected that stories on screen feel safe because endings are controlled, while real life is unpredictable and frightening. At the time, it sounded reflective. By the next morning, Tom understood the weight behind those words, and it hit him hard. Tom has committed to being present at the January court proceedings, not as a spectator, but as someone standing for his mentor's legacy. He's determined that Rob's name won't be overshadowed or misunderstood during this process. What adds another layer is what investigators later confirmed. Before Nick Reiner was taken into custody, he had reportedly been moving around the city for hours. For Tom, the most unsettling part isn't just what happened, but the silence that lingered while the truth remained undiscovered. Tom insists this wasn't a sudden or careless moment. To him, it shows signs of planning and emotional distance. He's also hinted that investigators uncovered communications and records that may explain how tensions escalated over time. This goes far beyond fame or headlines. For Tom, this marks the closing of an entire chapter in Hollywood history. He spoke out now because once legal proceedings begin, facts can get blurred by noise and speculation. Tom says Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer should be remembered for who they were, not only for how this chapter ended. His message is clear. The quiet struggles behind polished images are often the most serious, and ignoring them comes at a cost. As the January 7th court date approaches, the truth Tom Cruise says he's protecting feels like the last thing holding Rob Reiner's legacy steady. Quiet conversations among security teams and longtime staff describe a deeply unsettling situation from that night. Not just a family conflict, but a profound breach of trust that happened in the most private place imaginable. Sources say the situation unfolded inside Rob's personal living space, where he and Michelle Singer felt safest. That detail alone has shaken Tom badly. What disturbed him most was learning Rob may have been completely unprepared, possibly unable to respond because of the emotional bond involved. That realization feeds into what Tom calls the boundless love idea, a concept once discussed by Aaron Sorkin, but now it feels painfully real.
A source told People, quote, Nick was freaking everyone out, acting crazy, kept asking people if they were famous. I will say family friends have reportedly said the fight was overblown.
Tom knows how Hollywood operates. Handling issues often turns into quietly avoiding them, wrapping serious problems in polite language until they fade. This time, he refuses to let that happen. What weighs on him is how this moment casts a long shadow over Castle Rock Entertainment, the company Rob built on meaning and purpose. Tom has reached out to close friends like Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks, hoping to support Jake Reiner and Roy Reiner, who are now facing unimaginable responsibility and grief. Tom says this isn't just about one night. It's about the empty space left across Hollywood's creative world. Rob wasn't only a director, he was a guide and a stabilizing presence. Tom has also acknowledged reviewing past efforts Rob personally funded to help Nick Reiner get support, always handled quietly to protect the family. Now Tom is questioning whether Hollywood's habit of shielding its own delayed real accountability for too long. He's revealed investigators are now reviewing digital records and online writings that reflect deep internal struggle. To Tom, this shows the situation wasn't impulsive, but shaped over time by unresolved identity pressure. Those close to Tom say his usual confidence is gone. He's speaking now not as a star, but as someone mourning the man who kept him grounded when fame threatened to pull him off course. Rob taught him how to feel a scene, not just perform it. The subtle pauses, the timing, the legendary walk and talk moments that defined a generation of films. But beyond craft, Rob Reiner taught Tom Cruise something deeper: how to live with integrity in an industry built on illusion. And now, facing this unbearable loss, Tom says the hardest truth to accept is that a man who stood for honesty and compassion was ultimately let down by the people he loved most. That reality has forced Tom to question everything he believed about Hollywood loyalty, legacy, and the cost of always protecting your own. Nick's legal team, led by Alan Jackson, is reportedly pushing to keep sensitive records private, citing concern for surviving family members. But Tom isn't staying silent. Through his own legal connections, he's pressing for openness, believing transparency is the only way to prevent another powerful family from reaching this kind of breaking point. Tom's message is blunt. People need to see what unresolved struggle, resentment, and unchecked privilege can turn into when hidden behind gates and silence. He refuses to soften the reality, calling out the danger of avoidance and denial that quietly grows over time. As the year winds down, Los Angeles feels tense. Everyone senses something coming. This isn't just about Nick Reiner anymore. It's about Hollywood being forced to confront its own values: image over intervention, comfort over accountability. That era is being questioned loudly.
That this is a man with a serious history of substance abuse issues, that he's been open about that, talked about his struggles since he was 15.
Tom has also addressed whispers about Rob's health, confirming he was physically weakened but still mentally strong, still fighting. And Michelle Singer, Tom says, was the glue holding everything together. Losing both at once didn't just impact a family, it dismantled its foundation completely. What you hear in Tom's voice now isn't just anger, it's heartbreak mixed with urgency. He believes this isn't an isolated story, but a warning sign of a broken system that shields instead of supports. That's why Tom is calling for real change, not just remembrance, but action. He wants Rob and Michelle's legacy to spark honest conversations about family support and emotional well-being in high-pressure worlds. And he's backing it himself, helping launch a foundation in their names. Tom's words are already spreading fast. We can't just make movies about heroes anymore. We have to be them at home. And as January 7th approaches, this trial is shaping up to be less about what happened and more about why it was ever allowed to reach this point at all. Because of Tom Cruise, this story is finally being told from the right point of view, through the experience of Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer, not through carefully framed explanations from legal teams. Insiders say the evidence is extensive, and even professionals close to the case have acknowledged that the situation inside the home unfolded over a prolonged period, making it even harder to process. Investigators determined Rob and Michelle were located in different areas of the house, suggesting confusion, separation, and an inability to reach one another. For Tom, imagining that timeline is devastating. The thought that the man who brought warmth and joy to millions through films like The Princess Bride spent his final moments in fear inside the home he built with love is something Tom says Hollywood will never forget. Each time Tom speaks, more of the polished family image fades, replaced by something painfully human. But his goal isn't to diminish Rob's legacy. It's to show who Rob truly was: a husband, a father, and a man doing his best under crushing pressure. Tom insists Rob didn't fall because of weakness, but because the weight of fame, expectation, and emotional strain would have broken anyone. As Los Angeles braces for the January court proceedings, tension is everywhere. This isn't just about Nick Reiner anymore. It's about Hollywood confronting how it handles family struggles behind success and status. Tom has turned his grief into purpose. He's made it clear this is his final promise to a mentor he considered family. To him, this isn't entertainment. It's a reckoning. Behind the scenes at Castle Rock Entertainment, Tom says the final weeks were filled with strain. Meetings interrupted, urgent calls, and visible concern that many noticed but didn't question. And that's the truth Tom won't ignore anymore. Too many people saw the warning signs and stayed quiet. He's openly admitting his own silence played a role, and that honesty has shaken Hollywood deeply. Tom says this isn't an expose, it's accountability, a shared failure finally being acknowledged. And as the January 7th date approaches, this case is no longer about what happened. It's about why no one stepped in sooner.